bored. Then I will talk about the screening model that we established in our lab, and I explain why it's the best model system ever. And I will talk about the chemical libraries that we screened, and I present the results of the screening, and I present the conclusions and the perspectives. So what is tuberculosis? Tuberculosis is a very serious disease. It's the second deadliest disease in the world after HIV. I'm talking about infectious diseases, and it kills basically in millions every year. 1.4 million die. Per year it's about 1 person per 20 seconds, and 8 million people are getting infected. Mostly it's Asia and Africa. Despite the overall positive statistics, decrease of the incidence rate, prevalence, and mortality, the sheer numbers of deaths and infected people are still extremely huge. Tuberculosis is transmitted through the respiratory fluid when people are coughing. So you can just inhale Mycobacterium tuberculosis, the main pathogen causing tuberculosis, through the air if somebody new is infected with tuberculosis. And Mycobacterium tuberculosis results in a specific immune response. It's a granuloma, a special multicellular structure that contains macrophages, giant multinucleated cells, foamy cells, and some other types of cells like T cells and epithelial cells. Granuloma can also differentiate in a post-primary caveating lesion, which is cause a serious lung damage in the active form. So such cases always associated with a high mortality rates. And also bacteria could not inflict a massive immune response. It's a persistent mycobacteria which can occur in the lung and in the lymph nodes. Of course, there are plenty of drugs discovered so far against tuberculosis, but as you can see, majority of them discovered a long time ago. And actually, if you look at the drugs that are used in treatment, the newest drug is about more than 50 years old. So, and there are some drugs that are approved recently by United States Food and Drugs Administration. It's a TMC 207. It's also called bedaquiline. It's interesting drug because it can affect the latent tuberculosis. There are also plenty of drug candidates that are at various stages of drug development. But and if you look at this picture, it seems like the overall situation is extremely optimistic, but it's not the case. The problem of TB drug discovery is a very high attrition rates, so it means that each candidate at every stage of drug development can have high chances of failure, and this results in that means that work that lasts for like 10 years can be terminated without the positive results and drug entering the market. Another problem of TB drug development is that tuberculosis can have resistance against the drugs. So if the normal non-resistant tuberculosis doesn't doesn't result in a strong resistance against the majority of the drugs, so this tuberculosis is susceptible to all drugs used in TB treatment, it can still differentiate into the multiple drug-resistant tuberculosis. And this type of tuberculosis already has at least resistance to isoniazid and rifampicin, the two very important first-line anti-TB drugs. And this multiple resistant tuberculosis can also differentiate into extensively drug-resistant tuberculosis. And here you already have the resistance against second-line drugs, like streptomycin, capreomycin, amikacin, and fluoroquinolones. And but the situation could be even worse. So you can get the totally drug-resistant tuberculosis. And this is already a superbugs that almost nothing can kill, and it's extremely difficult to treat patients that have TBR. And the problem of drug resistance is especially serious in my home place, so in Russia. Due to the collapse of the Soviet Union, many of the health programs were shut down, and that means that many of the TB strains were left untreated. And this is pretty much the worst thing you can do, and that immediately results in the emergence of multiple drug resistance. So for me, it's also kind of personal. Another problem of Mycobacterium tuberculosis is specific characteristics of mycobacterial cell wall. It has a very thick mucolic acid layer, which makes it highly impermeable for the drugs. And also, that's why one of the effective strategies against tuberculosis is to target the cell wall, for example, isoniazid or ethambutol DUB. So I finished with my introduction part, and now I will switch to the second part of my talk. I will talk about the establishment of our screening system, and first of all, I would like to present the pathogen model system that we selected. So there are four main pathogen models that are established. It's Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which is an obvious choice because it's the actual main pathogen that causes tuberculosis, but it has problems. The main problem of Mycobacterium tuberculosis is that it causes real tuberculosis, and it means that it's a really very serious disease. It requires biosafety 3-level lab, extensive training of the staff, and not many labs can afford it. And at the same time, it grows relatively slowly, so it's 24-30 hours doubling time, which significantly increased the time required for the experiments. So that's why people use alternative model systems, such as Mycobacterium bovis BCG. It's genetically close to Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and its biosafety level is lower, so you can work it in biosafety 2-level lab. But the problem of this strain is that it's attenuated strain, so you get the no complete TB-like pathogenesis, and also it grows relatively slow. So that's why there is another model system. It is Smegmatis, which is grows really fast. It's really safe, and but the main problem of this system is that it has no tuberculosis pathogenesis because it's harmless, and that makes it difficult to target the antivirulence, to target pathogenic properties of tuberculosis. It's also the same problem with BCG, just less accentuated. And the model system that we are using in the lab is Mycobacterium marinum, which is a compromise between the Mycobacterium bovis, sphygmatis, and tuberculosis. It is a relatively safe pathogen, so it's by safety 2 level. It grows relatively fast. But the most important that it causes TB-like pathogenesis only in ectotherms, so in fish and frog, and that makes it possible to target pathogenic host pathogen interactions. So activity specific for host pathogen interactions, and it's genetically more distant than BCG, but closer than Mycobacterium sphygmatis. So we think that it's an acceptable compromise. Here there is some additional confirmations of this. So we have here we have granuloma in human lung. This is Mycobacterium tuberculosis granuloma, and here we have granuloma in the zebrafish tissue, and you can see that morphology of the granuloma is very similar. Here there is a phylogenetic tree that shows that it's Mycobacterium marinum is the closest to the Mycobacterium tuberculosis complex group here. So we selected the pathogen model, so now we need to select the host model, and for this we decided to choose amoeba, which is professional phagocytes, the natural predators of bacteria, and they phenotypically resembles the macrophages, the main target of Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So here on this video you can see the, one of the phagocytes of the immune system. It's a neutrophil. It's very morphologically close to Mycobacterium, close to macrophage, and it crawls and attacks the bacteria in order to defend the organism from the infection. At the same time, amoeba, as you can see here, it has similar morphology, and it kills bacteria in order to feed. Here you have an example of infected macrophage with Mycobacterium tuberculosis. You see that there is a endosome containing bacteria, and it's very similar morphologically to the phagosome containing Mycobacterium marinum in Dictyostelium, one of the species of amoeba. So there are two well-established amoeba model in host pathogen interaction studies field. So we have Acanthamoeba castellani and Dictyostelium discoidum, which is both have advantages and disadvantages. We decided to use both of them because Dictyostelium discoidum provides us with well-established genetic tools. It has sequenced haploid genome, and it's quite easy to generate knockouts, for example. It's especially interesting in microscopy because you can use fluorescent GFP reporters. Acanthamoeba castellani at the same time has its own advantages, such as no developmental stage, and that means that it's more robust. It's less sensitive to stresses, perhaps. And there is also, it can survive at high temperatures, up to 37 degrees, which is a normal temperature for Mycobacterium tuberculosis infection. And we decided to use this system, the Dictyostelium discoidum with GFP fluorescence expression for the our cytotoxic and growth inhibition assay, and Acanthamoeba castellani for our infection assay. We will talk about that a little bit later. So the main goal of the project is to identify novel antitubercular compounds, and in our strategy we use amoeba and Mycobacterium marinum as a host pathogen model system. So in order to characterize compounds that that we are screening, we need to identify its effects on pathogen and the host. So what kind of effects we can get? So one of the effects, which is very nice, it's antibiotic effect, and it's a activity that usually is targeted by traditional pharmaceutical approaches, and this kind of activity affects bacteria in the broth primary, and it also can have some effects in vivo system, but it's not always the case. And that's why we are interested in another type of antibacterial activity. It's anti-infectives. So this type of activity affects specifically infection, intracellular bacteria. And these kind of activities are usually overlooked by traditional approaches because in many cases you don't have strong activity in bacteria in broth. Another type of activity which is not very interesting for us, but we need to detect it, is the cytotoxic activity. So it's just the killing of the host instead of bacteria. So in order to monitor this kind of activities, we established a set of assays, including infection assay, amoeba growth assay, and bacterial growth assay. In order to monitor the mycobacterium growth for our antibiotic and mycobacterial growth inhibition assay, we're using Mycobacterium marium with a constant expression of GFP reporters. Here you can observe the growth of mycobacterium in the broth. You can see that fluorescence is very stable and bright, and it's proportional to the cell numbers, as you can see from here. And if you look closely at this picture, this growth of bacteria was monitored for 72 hours. You can see that actually there is some kind of movement of bacteria from one side of the well to another one. It's a well from a 96 well plate. And that's why we decided to use much bigger field for the screening in order to decrease the errors of quantification. We use almost the whole well of the 96 well plate. There are 9 areas, and we take the average fluorescence of this area, and we get the growth curves like that, which correspond to the data that we observe in the literature. So here there are some examples of the activities that we get. This is the few traditional